The TTC with our request for proposal was the fact that there's a lack of a system to give you TTC route information on site in like real time. And it's a problem because, first of all, it's a usability issue. Because if you think about it, commuters use the TTC to get from point A to point B, okay? Everyone knows where point A is, and everyone knows where point B is, right? Those are pretty obvious. But how do you know which stop is actually closest to point B? How do you actually know which stop to get off at? Sometimes it's obvious, but most of the time it's not, especially if you haven't used the system before. For you guys, someone probably told you where to go off the first time, something like that. But you need some kind of system in place to help you find out. And let's say, okay, you've solved the puzzle. You know where to get off. How do you actually get there? Which route do you take? What if you have to transfer 1 or 2 buses? What if you have to transfer 3 buses and a subway, right? There has to be some kind of system in place that's going to let you know how to get through a confusing route and how to actually get to where you're going. And it's important. It's also a sustainability issue because as the TTC expands, there's going to be more and more routes, more and more stops, things like that. It's going to become really confusing to get to the place you need to get to, and how to get there the fastest. You know, what's the best route to get there? Or maybe what's the most comfortable route? What's going to give you a better probability of sitting down? Things like that. And these routes are really important to know because I'll give you personal experience. When I take the 53 home from Finch Station almost every day, I take the express because I know that it doesn't skip my stop, okay? But every time, without fail, there's at least 2 or 3 people who don't know that the first stop is at Bayview, which means it skips all the stops on Yonge and all the stops on Steeles, okay? And guaranteed every time there's 2 people, and there's always tension between the driver and the passenger. Could you please stop this one time? I didn't know, things like that. These are things that riders need to know before they get on a bus that they don't know where it's going. And the TTC has a couple of different solutions in place that they try to ease the situation, but Kyle's going to talk about the limitations.
So the current solutions we have are to actually go to a TTC system map and find out what route you want to take. But as you can clearly see from the map, it's really hard to read and it's really confusing. Also, even with slightly more clearer maps, you won't know which exact stop to go to since only the stops at major intersections are listed. So to actually find a specific stop, you would have to go on the internet. However, not everyone has access to the internet when you're on the go. You won't have Wi-Fi in the middle of nowhere, and some people can't afford a data plan. Also, the website itself, when you actually go to a TTC system map, you have to keep on scrolling in, and it gets really hard to maneuver around on the file, so that's another problem. And then the third solution we have is to actually go to go phone one of the TTC workers. The problem with this is not everyone knows knows the TTC phone number off their top of the head, and some people don't carry around cell phones. So we came up with a list of requirements that we use to evaluate this problem, which Segun will talk about.
Okay, so in order to consider this problem as a design problem, we had to first decide a definition for engineering design, and this is what we considered as our definition for engineering design. And when we pit their solution against our definition, what we realized that it didn't really fit our definition because it wasn't pragmatic enough by the requirements that we set out. So the requirements that we set out are that the content of the route information has to be good, and they're categorized by the 4 levels. It has to be accessible, so the content that they give has to be accessible by those requirements, and they have to be portrayed in a manner which we can read or anything. And we evaluated the system. To begin, we evaluated the content of the route information, and we gave them about a level 2, because by looking at this, we see that most of the stops aren't even listed. If you look at this, you don't even know where the buses are going to stop other than the major intersections. And if you look at these general maps, all you have is the information of where the subway stops are located. So that lies that more than 50% of the stops are not listed. Second, we went into accessibility. I guess they have a pretty good solution in terms of accessibility because it is somewhat accessible to most riders because these maps do exist at most stops, and they do have the large blown up maps. But the detailed maps only exist in the internet, and that is not accessible at all times, so that's why it does not make a level 4. And the last part is the portrayal of route information. We decided that that lies somewhere between level 2 and level 3 because it does have a good organization in the sense that it's it has legends, and in the real maps it's color-coded. But the problem with that is that, as you can see in this map, there's just way too much information cramped into a small space, and that's why it falls somewhere between level 2 and 3. And so by going by these requirements, we have defined that this is a design problem that the TTC has to address urgently. And are there any questions?